Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We'll take you up to 5 o'clock straight up. We are powered by our wonderful friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase, as always. BYP20 on this, the 20th of August, 2025. We are also brought to you by Get Ready with Tea, Three Brooks Bourbon, as well as the Jersey Shore Breaks of the TBL. All right, so busy show. Costco is going to join us in about 15 or so minutes. We'll talk a little college football with him. We will certainly open up with what I think is, kind of an interesting story going on right now in the NFL. And it came down yesterday that the Indianapolis Colts will start Danny Nichols week one. They benched Anthony Richardson. Now, if you've listened to the show as well as Back Your Play, I mentioned this several times with Lloyd Vance. I thought it was pretty much a write-in, a shoe-in that Daniel Jones was going to be the week one starter. I know everyone has their own thought on if the Colts made the right decision, if maybe they overextended themselves, over-evaluated Anthony Richardson, who played a handful of games coming out of college, if they are giving up too quickly on Anthony Richardson. You listen to what Shane Steichen, their head coach, has to say, and then you listen to what some of the current Colts players have to say. This might be a long season. Well, it's going to be a long season for the Indianapolis Colts because you can already start to see a divide, and that's typically what happens. That's typically what happens when players come out and, again, they have comments and they back the backup or they back the starter. And unfortunately, in today's NFL, it is always a week-to-week proposition. But the reality is this: Anthony Richardson, who had a handful of games in college, he's only 23. He was not a top 10 quarterback. He was not a top 5 quarterback. Hell, he wasn't a number 4 overall pick. I mean, they overshot themselves in this regard. They did. And even last year, banged up. Again, you only saw him for a couple of games. He played 10, 11 games, had a flash here and there. His rookie season, just 4 games, again, dealing with those injuries. But he's 23. He's just 23 years old. Like, he is a young player. Now, I've seen enough of Daniel Jones throughout his Giant tenure to know exactly what you're going to get in Daniel Jones. And the interesting thing is this: Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson will drive the Colts fan batty in this regard. The irony is that you watch a player like Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones will give you flashes, moments, and then he will do something that makes you basically shake your head. He'll do something that will make you absolutely go nuts, drive you insane. Throw an ill-advised pick, take a sack, overthrow. It's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. Like, you can flip-flop them, and it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Now, Anthony Richardson is a young player. Anthony Richardson is a very young player. Daniel Jones has been around the block. But we both know Daniel Jones is just, he is who he is at this point of his career. And I don't know if they're going to go back to Anthony Richardson. The way they made it sound is that they're going to give up on this kid. And that's unfortunate because, again, it's not the kid's fault where he's drafted. You and I both know that. And I see Colts Nation coming in already a couple minutes past 4 o'clock hour. You know what it is on a Wednesday. It is certainly a Woosah Wednesday. We see how fast it takes the listening and texting audience to get under my skin. Costco in about 15, but a lot of NFL news and notes to get into. And we'll take up to 5, as I mentioned, on this Wednesday. I just think they jumped the gun a little bit. I think the decision was rash. I think the decision was made in haste. And I think the decision is basically the Indianapolis Colts have shown you, have told you, have now acted upon, which you have no other belief here, is that they're done with Anthony Richardson. Unless Daniel Jones gets hurt or he stinks up the joint, you're probably not going to see Anthony Richardson again suit up for the Indianapolis Colts. And listen, who knows what his future holds? But he's 23. He is young. And I think, when you have a head coach in Shane Steichen, where they turned around and they signed Daniel Jones for 1 year, 14 million, this is your classic risk to reward, right? Risk to reward. That's all it is. Low risk, high reward. And I also think what we do sometimes is this. We look at some of these quarterbacks, we see what they do in college, and we want to plug and play them to that style and that fit in the NFL. And sometimes it doesn't work out like this. Now, explain this to me, because I think this was a rash decision. I think this was an Indianapolis Colts franchise that is searching for some answers. And they realize their fan base is about to revolt. They want a winner. They want a proven commodity at the quarterback position. But the bottom line is this: that's not Daniel Jones. I mean, it's just not. I mean, Daniel Jones, again, is not your answer. He is a bridge. He might win you a couple games. Now, he gets the benefit of the doubt because he's played in 60, 70 something odd games. Daniel Jones is starting because Daniel Jones went on the road a couple years ago with the Giants and won a playoff game. That's all this really is. Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson is an athletic quarterback. He can tuck it in. He can do a little RPO. So can Daniel Jones. But the fact that the Colts basically made this decision, it's not shocking, because if you actually follow and read the tea leaves that Shane Steichen has pretty much laid out, even before they signed Daniel Jones, they wanted what? They were looking someone that can run an offense, consistency, and completion percentage. Now, I'll say this about Daniel Jones. He can run an offense. He's not always consistent. And at times, when the pocket's there and he has time, he can pick you apart. But they decide we're going with the guy with 69, 70 starts over the guy with 15. And listen, I think the NFL has a problem on their hands. Either we're overvaluating these kids coming out of college, or we don't have enough patience. That's the way I look at it. Either we're overvaluating them. We're saying to ourselves that, this quarterback is going to come in from the get-go and they're going to start and they're going to make plays and they're going to lead us, and they're a dime a dozen, right? I mean, there are some rarities in the world. There really are. But the fact that you have a quarterback who's been benched now several times in 2 seasons before he's even seen a game in 2025, to me, that kind of tells you, and I will not, if you guys listen to me over the years, I rarely will defend some of these quarterbacks, because I think if you stink, you stink. But I also have to be objective here, and I have to be fair. You got to be fair. The reason they brought in Daniel Jones, twofold, 2 reasons actually. You weren't just going to, you had an injury, obviously, but you weren't just going to hand the job to Anthony Richardson. So they wanted a little competition. Now, the worst thing a young quarterback can do in the NFL, it's not even get hurt. It's not even play poorly. It's not even not being engaged. It's when you lose trust in an organization. And that's exactly what's happened here. Anthony Richardson, the Colts have no trust in Anthony Richardson. Ballard has no trust. Steichen has no trust. So when you've got a player that's struggling to get on the field, tapping out of a game, not processing, just not all there mentally, I lose trust. But the reality is this: in a vacuum, Richardson had a better camp than Daniel Jones. He made more throws down the field, and he was always going to hold the edge as a game breaker rusher. Daniel Jones is not going to do that. And now you can sit there and say, well, wait a second. Then why are they pivoting away from a 23-year-old quarterback? Because, again, just like what Cleveland's doing with Joe Flacco, they're playing it safe. They're playing it safe because they know they need to win games. They need to win games. And like I said, I think sometimes these franchises don't, I think you guys have pointed out, they don't develop the quarterback the right way. They over-evaluate. Maybe they don't scout properly. Maybe they think if the guy is a stud in college, it's going to equate to him being successful in the NFL on a Sunday. And that doesn't necessarily work out like that. It just doesn't. It's It takes a rare bird, a rare breed to be an NFL starting quarterback, a high level NFL starting quarterback. That's why we always sit there and say there's only a handful of great quarterbacks in the NFL. Everything else is middle of the road. Everything else is good, not great, average, not good, below average, but not average. That's kind of your tiers in the NFL. And you get a handful of guys that just played at different level. Trey Lance was a bad draft pick. It was not going to work out for Trey Lance. You and I both know that. It wasn't going to work out for Trey Lance, okay? Justin Fields trying to find a home right now with the Jets, but he's also been struggling. Remember, we wanted to write off Bryce Young a couple years ago. Now all of a sudden we're talking about the culture, the change of culture, get some reps. But Indianapolis is doing quite the opposite. They're doing the opposite. They're giving up on a young quarterback that I believe has a little bit of upside. Obviously, he shouldn't have been drafted where he was drafted, but sometimes you have to give these guys patience. You do. And this is coming from a fan of a football team that kept trugging out Daniel Jones season after season. And when everyone was defending him, I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I'll defend him the first couple years, but then after that, I don't want to hear the offensive line. I don't want to hear lack of weapons. I don't want to hear injuries. Like, now you're going in your fourth, your fifth, your sixth season. So here's a quarterback that's played 70 games in the NFL. 70 games in the NFL. And now he's playing on what? His third team, because he's pretty much was relegated as a backup in Minnesota. The Giants didn't want him anymore. They wanted to get out of that nonsense. I'm not going to say he quit on the organization, but the optics and perception was he didn't want to get benched. He would rather ask for his release. Okay, you're a young quarterback. You made your money. Go find somewhere where you can lay your hat for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Rest assured, the first couple games he struggles and he has bad turnovers. They're going to be looking, all right, what are we going to do here? What direction are we going to go? But like I called this from the get-go. I'm not shocked by this. I'm not. Where I'm shocked is how you're going to jettison this kid right off the bat, and you're basically coming out saying, look, Daniel Jones is going to be the starter pretty much for the whole season. That's a problem, right? That's a problem. All right, 13 past the 4 o'clock hour. Quick timeout. We're going to get to your comments. Costco on the other side. We'll talk some college football, but I'll get his thoughts too on Anthony Richardson because obviously, here's a kid that had a handful of games at college. We'll talk more about the college, what's going on college-wise, news and notes. We'll also get in, as I mentioned, a lot of the NFL today. We'll take you up to about 5 plus on a Woosah Wednesday edition of On Cue. Keep it locked in. We're powered by our wonderful friends over at Get Ready Tea, fresh roasted coffee, and of course, 3 Brooks Bourbon. We'll take a quick time out. We'll come back on the other side. All right, 4:14 on a Wednesday edition on Q. We'll take you up to 5-ish on this Wednesday, as we mentioned, August 20th, 2025. Lloyd Vance later on the week, Steve Gardner on baseball. And as I mentioned, we're talking some NFL quarterbacking, but we'll get into what's going on college football-wise as we welcome him. We'll certainly get his thoughts on this. Nick Costco from On3 Sports. Give him a follow at Nick Costco59. How are you, my friend?
Doing good, Rich. Weather's taking a turn for the worse here in South Jersey. It's been raining. It's like all of a sudden it's not summer anymore, and that I should be about 5 weeks deep into football season already.
Yeah, it's absolutely freaking depressing, and the worst is when the days actually get shorter. But you know what? I mean, it's a Woosah Wednesday. I'm trying to find my happy place. I don't need you to aggravate me on this Wednesday.
You wait a couple minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get into this with Anthony Richardson because again, I'm not shocked that the Colts benched him for Daniel Jones, but as I mentioned, he's 23. He certainly, I don't believe the kid should have been the 4th round pick by the Colts in 2023, but he played a handful of games in college. So, do you believe that it's too small of a sample size sometimes with these college quarterbacks, or maybe the NFL, they're not evaluating them properly and they're giving up too quickly on them?
Could be a combination of both, and I don't want to give you the cop-out answer, but I was always of the mind that Anthony Richardson, and again, I'm a Florida guy, as go Gators since I was young, obviously. But when I was looking at Anthony Richardson in college, it's like he comes in 2020 was his first year at Florida. He barely plays. I think he threw maybe like one or two passes as a freshman, but then it was that second year where it's like, okay, he plays 7, 8 games, whatever the case was. I think he was either hurt slash, didn't play the entire season, but you're like, okay, the intangibles are there, the potential is there, but this is a very, very raw quarterback prospect who has a cannon for an arm, has all the physical traits, but had a completion percentage below 60%, 60% that season. It's like, okay, he's going to make mistakes. And then when he gets the full-fledged year in 2022, he plays 12 games. And, I can remember watching him just like this guy, when he's on, it's like, yeah, that's the freak athlete that I would want a quarterback. And I could see going top 5 in the NFL draft. But the whole narrative with Anthony Richardson after 2022 was this dude needs to stay in college for another year to develop, because looking at his stat line, 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks, not bad. Completion percentage, though, below 54%. And we're talking about a guy that, also ran for, it was a good dual threat quarterback then, at least, almost 700 yards. I think he had like 9 or 10 touchdowns on the ground as well. So it was there, but because NFL scouts fell in love with, boy, if we just put this guy in the right system, and it's almost like when you're in a relationship, it's like, okay, yeah, that's who I want to date because I know I can fix them. I know I can fix Anthony Richardson, but you can't fix him at the pro level. You have to develop him, and they kind of just shoehorned him into the starting lineup a couple years ago in Indianapolis, and then he got hurt. We saw what it was like, that 170-yard bomb throw he had as a rookie, and then he had shoulder surgery his rookie season, and over the last couple of years, he's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with extremely inconsistent play. He hasn't looked that very good. And then to tack onto it, I can't believe, are people forgetting about the story last year where he subbed himself out of a game? Like, quarterbacks don't do that because he was
No,
tired.
they don't. They shouldn't. No, they don't.
Right. So, like, if we're forgetting about that, you shouldn't, because this is all part of the Anthony Richardson narrative. That usually when we say the word narrative these days, it's like
Right.
it's what people are making up. But no, this
Sure, the
is
agenda.
fact. He was a very raw quarterback prospect in college. He wasn't fully developed, but because NFL scouts fell in love with his physical traits and tools, he was told, like, hey, you're probably going to go top 10, top 5 in the draft. There's no better time than to strike while the iron's hot right now. And he did, no fault of his own. If I were him in that same situation, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go play in the NFL too. It's not like it was before NIL, so he could have made money at Florida, but it's like, if you're going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, that means you're guaranteed a lot of money. And especially at the quarterback position, you're guaranteed a lot of money right off the bat, albeit a rookie contract. Yeah. So I don't blame him for going to the NFL draft. It's not like, I don't think they could have convinced him to stay at Florida for one more year for his senior campaign. Or, I think he technically actually would have had 2 more years of eligibility just based on the COVID year, but still. So I think my long-winded answer to that is he wasn't ready. I never thought he was ready. And I think the Colts,
but they still drafted him.
Right. I think the Colts basically they mismanaged him. I think they wanted to force the new star, because they were like,
and that's what I said.
Somebody we haven't had anybody since Andrew Luck, and we've constantly screwed everything up. We brought in Shane Steichen. We need to fix this. Steichen can fix this, but I believe, if memory serves, Richardson's rookie year lines up with Steichen's first year as head coach after the Eagles went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So, hot offensive coordinator name. Made Jalen Hurts look great that year. With that particular offense, he could do the same with Anthony Richardson. And at that point, you're like, well, why hasn't this worked? And I think it just goes to show the mismanagement from the Colts as an organization as a whole. And then I think they rushed it on Richardson, and because they rushed it, they basically can't put the toothpaste back into the tube now. Because now you already said, well, Daniel, and didn't Steichen say yesterday too? Daniel Jones is our starter for the entire season.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing to do. And a couple things. Yeah. So I think Anthony Richards still is a young kid. I think he's still immature, right? And this is humble pie right now. I think it was trying to force that round peg into a square hole, or round peg into a square, right? I also think that Steichen, he's done. He's going to get fired, and you're going to see a franchise overhaul. Like Daniel Jones, if they win, 10 games, it would be an absolute miracle. And this guy would be the coach of the year, and Daniel Jones would be in the MVP conversation and comeback player of the year. That's not happening. And the fact that he already came out and said, look, he's our best quarterback for 2025. There's not going to be a short leash. That kind of tells me they're going to ride or die with this guy. Now, right. I still ultimately, to what a couple of the guys were texting in, there's no more patience. Like, we talk about the quarterback position in the NFL, and we're talking about these guys coming out of college. And I feel as though either we gloss them, we shine them up too much, or these scouts have no idea how in the world to evaluate a quarterback. They think because he looks the part, he acts the part, he plays the part, he's got a strong arm, he's a good looking guy, he's got charisma and character, stick him on the field on Sunday. It doesn't work like that. And now you've got a scenario where you're going to have a head coach out of a job, you're going to jettison another journeyman quarterback, you're going to have a Justin Fields, Trey Lance 2.0, and Anthony Richardson. Now, it's crazy because, correct me if I'm wrong, they give up on Bryce Young in Carolina?
No, and they haven't. And you're talking about a guy that was drafted number 1 overall, and you would think by the same logic, because they didn't give up on Bryce Young, you shouldn't give up on Anthony Richardson. And now, frankly, I wouldn't give up on Richardson either. But the problem is, you back yourself into a corner where you've already benched him. You've already had all these narratives come out about him, about his work, potentially his work ethic, obviously his injury history, and plus the fact that he hasn't played very well under an offensive-minded head coach. And then you see the resurrection of Bryce Young last year, where this kid was unbelievable in college, right? So number 1 overall pick, play for Alabama. Nick Saban's like, this is like one of the best guys I ever coached and whatnot. And then he stinks. He stinks right off the bat, albeit with a pretty bad franchise, but he turned it around last year, especially down the stretch. You're like, okay, that's why they drafted number 1 overall, because now you have the right support system in place. I don't think the Colts have that. And if you go back to that 2023 campaign where their quarterback depth chart that year, you had Anthony Richardson, you had Gardner Minshew, and had Sam Ehlinger. Now, nothing against Sam Ehlinger, who was a good college quarterback for Texas, not an NFL starter at the level that the Colts would need him to be. Gardner Minshew, he's had his spurt, right? So it's like, if that was your situation in 2023, and I have to think these Colts scouts and the coaching staff, the whole front office, whatever the case may be, I have to think that they thought Anthony Richardson was a guy that, we need to develop him and make sure he's ready to go before we throw him out there to the Wolves. And he might make the freak throw and win us a couple games that we shouldn't, because he makes a freak play, but there's going to be a lot of growing pains with this. If they knew that, and that, again, it's a big if based on what we've seen over the last 2+ years, if they knew that, why didn't you start Gardner Minshew the entire year? Because if I go back and look at that season, they were 7-6 with Gardner Minshew under center, albeit 2-2 with Richardson in a small sample size. But that team went 9-8 in Steichen's first year, just missed out on the playoffs. If Minshew plays the whole season, maybe that team makes the playoffs, and it's like, then it's that situation where, all right, how much longer do we give Minshew the starting role before we say, all right, time to unleash a guy like Anthony Richardson, likened to the Vikings this past year, right? You have a journeyman in Sam Darnold, goes off career year, but it's like, okay, we're still going to go all in on J.J. McCarthy. Maybe it could have been a situation like that where you make Richardson sit, but no, they didn't do that. So the fact that this basically is giving up on him, the fact that they're like, barring injury, Daniel Jones is going to start all 17 games this year, then you might as well start fielding trade calls for Richardson right now, because I'm sure some team would be willing to take a chance on either to resurrect them into an eventual long-term starter, or at least a better depth piece than what they have. I mean, if only I guess I could throw out a team like the Saints, because it seems like everyone uses the Saints as a team that has no quarterback. But can you imagine a guy like Kellen Moore, getting Anthony Richardson for cheaper than what he actually is worth, and all of a sudden he turns him into something? But again, I'm just purely speculating and just throwing darts at a wall right here. But it is it is fascinating. In year 3, we see the short leashes all the time. You go back to Josh Rosen, 1 year. Boom. So,
by the way, I screamed at the mountaintop Josh Rosen was going to be a bust. That. I constantly said, and it didn't work out, and he bounced around. You're right, but the NFL has a problem on their hands, especially when it comes to evaluating the quarterback. It does. These young quarterbacks. Yeah. And to your point, I think some of them, they need to stay in college. They need to get the reps.
That, or the process, as you mentioned, with the NFL, just with a lot of franchises. It's not all franchises, but a lot of franchises, they're trying to rush because it's the big name. It's going to sell tickets. It's going
to got to win.
Fan base. It's always worked like this, but in this day and age, especially with what these kids are doing in college and in the digital age where you see the hype for a freshman quarterback, and I'm sure we'll talk about Arch Manning 1,000 times this year, but it's like Arch Manning started 2 games in his college career, but there's already I aggregated a mock draft today, Q, on shift, that had Arch Manning as the number 1 overall pick for next year's draft. There's no guarantee he goes into next year's draft, so that's where we're at in terms of the quarterback evaluation and what we think, or at least what the media members are gathering from all these franchises about what they're thinking about quarterbacks.
Unbelievable. Vince says, I heard so many pundits contradict themselves saying you can't start a rookie. In the next segment, say Cam Ward is going to light it up. Caleb Williams is a lock to be great. I mean, I listen, I think there are certain scenarios and situations where you can start a rookie. Like I've said it, and I'm not contradicting myself or talking out of both sides of my mouth. I think there are certain spots where throw him in, see what he has. Carolina was that spot. The Giants with Jackson Dart is not that spot because you have two viable options as backups with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. You'll live with a bridge for a little bit. Now, it could be 4 games, it could be 3 games, could be 5 games. It doesn't matter. Hell, Russell Wilson, God forbid, one of these quarterbacks can go down the first snap of the season. So years ago was different, right?
Right.
We
these guys sat for 2-3 years sometimes.
They did, but then there were scenarios where a guy like Troy Aikman, handful of games, then full-time starter, goes 1-15. He got the snot beat out of him. But you're right. It was years ago, but now you got to think of, as Lloyd Vance always says, the bonus babies when it comes to the money. Like guys were sitting behind other guys. Some franchises can ill afford to do that because we know their head coaches go in as lame ducks.
Right.
And they've got, they don't really have a longer leash, right? So to speak.
And it's funny how you mentioned the contrast between 10, 15 years ago to even now. If you want to go back further, that's fine. But even just the last 10, 15 years, you see the shift to these quarterbacks who are good right away, or the teams are trying to find that because it's the cheaper way to do it. You have a quarterback on the rookie contract, you surround him with a bunch of talent, and all of a sudden, this team is really good within the first 3 to maybe after a rookie year in most cases, but years 2 through 4 for a quarterback before that 5th year kicks in. It's like, well, you're still on this rookie deal, which is much cheaper, so we can surround you with the all-pro wide receiver and some talented players at tight end, linebacker, give you two great offensive linemen, and then fill out our defense as well. You're surrounded by a great supporting cast, and I think that's been the case for a good amount of quarterbacks. Obviously, the most recent example is Jaden Daniels last year, who was, again, coming off a Heisman Trophy winning campaign. Not saying Anthony Richardson, but like he was probably more NFL ready. But it's like, did you really expect Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders to go to the championship game last year? No, but he played out of his mind, and they had a lot of talent around him, and they rebuilt that culture. And that's an example of a franchise doing right by a potential franchise quarterback, where it's like, hey, we're going to throw you the wolves, but it's not going to be all on you, because we want to surround you with the pieces that can allow you to succeed. Maybe we're not expecting to go 12-5 and make a run to almost getting to the Super Bowl, but we can make a run to potentially make the playoffs, or have you, at least stay upright and healthy and play well and give the franchise hope. Use that example from last year. The Colts did the exact opposite.
Yeah, and Joe D chimes in on X, says, Q, the one thing you guys failed to mention, Bryce Young. What do you always say, Q? It's that first year to second year. Correct. First year, second year jump progressions. Speaking of progressions, second year. By the way, I kind of like this name, Julian. Just saying. Ohio State will name him as the starting quarterback. They named him second year player Julian Sayin. So he gets the nod in the
No G.
Yeah, much anticipated season opener against number 1 Texas. Go figure with these rankings. But anyway, this kid only had 5 games under his belt last season?
I believe so. Maybe even 4.
Maybe 4 games, even
less.
less.
It is funny when we say, like, oh yeah, he appeared in 4 games. The kid threw 12 passes last year. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Now, granted, he was an early enrollee at Alabama, and that didn't work out based on the way their quarterback depth chart ended up playing out. And of course, with the Nick Saban retirement, that kind of threw things for a loop. So he left there, and he ended up at Ohio State last year. But yeah, he won the job. So now it's on Ryan Day, it seems.
Yeah, it is. I feel as though it's just weird. Man says, "Hey, Costco, let me get 20 super." Oh, there you go.
It's regular, not regular.
Let me see. Vince says, "By the way, I regretfully must admit, I'm a Sam's Club kind of guy. Sorry, Costco. There you go." By the way, he's got a CU take. We'll get into a moment. I just, the hype with Arch Manning, and now there's reports coming out. Well, just because Archie Manning said, no, he's not coming out. That's not necessarily true. You mentioned you have a mock draft, so you have him coming out and being the number one overall pick next season.
Yeah, so we got one from ESPN today. It was ESPN's first one, so we have it. We have our taken analysis on it. Of course, at On3, you can just search my profile on there. But yeah, this already had Arch Manning going number one overall, and it is fascinating because I wrote yesterday because Arch came out yesterday to dispel his grandfather's comments. He was just like, yeah, I don't know where you got that from. But anyway, taking it day by day. So, and it's funny because we usually say, well, if someone says I'm taking it day by day, that means they're probably going to go to the NFL draft next year. But I truly don't know what he's going to do. But at least that mock draft, and it's the first one that we have seen so far, a big, a major one. This was Field Yates, by the way. For 2026, he has the Cleveland Browns picking number one overall. Ironically, with their gigantic quarterback room. So and taking Arch Manning, I can't buy that Manning's going to go to the draft right now. Now, again, I also can't buy the fact that he is definitely going to stay another year at Texas if the field is right for him in the NFL draft, because we know, RG3 already threw out the theory right there. We were joking about it at work over the last 2 days. The Colts are tanking for Arch Manning. The writing is on the wall right here. If they are so bad and they hit a factory reset on this franchise, get the number one overall pick, and if Arch Manning is really good this year, I'm not even saying he has to win the Heisman, but if he is really good this year, Texas makes a big playoff run, whether they win the title or not. You don't think that Arch Manning, with maybe a brand new Colts regime, is going to say, and get the talking to from Peyton and Eli, and obviously his father Cooper in his ear, and be like, hey, you could potentially go number one overall to the Indianapolis Colts. Carry on the family legacy. You're going to be like, you have carte blanche with that franchise due to your last name, due to your skill level. I mean, the theory is on the wall right here. But as far as, do I actually think he's going to do it? I don't know. I think he's really well. I think he will go. I don't think there's any reason for him to stay if he's playing that well. And if he's NFL ready by the end of the year, there's no reason for him to stay. He's already spent 3 years in college, 2 developing and 1 actually playing at a full season's length. But as far as the 2026 or 2027 draft takes are concerned, that to me, I'll give you a better prediction, I would say, when we're about halfway through the season.
Well, hell, if that's the case, then they might as well start Anthony Richardson.
And they'll be even worse.
To be honest, like Daniel Jones might upset the apple cart and they win 6 or 7 games and they're drafting, at 11. Yeah. Like I told you, the Jets and the Giants are going to be bad. I think they're going to be really, really bad. I can see them, the Saints, again. I can see them in the mix, top 5 draft pick. Cleveland's going to be a bad team, man. I feel as though there is this sense of curiosity where I want to see Cleveland struggle out of the gate, go 1-4, 1-5, and then just let Sanders play for 10, 11 games and see what the kid has. There's this morbid, I want to see if the kid can play on Sundays, because Watson's not the answer. Flacco's not the answer. Gabriel, which is funny, I mentioned this on Monday's show, and I had to go back and actually correct myself. I thought he was taking a little shot at Sanders with his comments. He was basically blasting solitary A. Smith and talking about the media head. So, hey, have at it, Dylan Gabriel. Go ahead.
It's pretty funny that you were one of the guys who's who usually checks his sources a couple times.
Always.
And even you fell for that, which is actually my body.
I thought he was telling him to go shine the shoebox there. I was like, well, wait a second. Is he
I'm not going to fault him for that, because he was just answering a question.
Because the word entertainer came out. That's why. So that's bad on me. That's bad on me.
Just as a side note, can we blame the NFL itself and their social media team? They have 10,000, 10 million followers on Twitter, and they tweeted that clip out without the question. And let me just double check. Oh, I'm sorry, 37.8 million followers on Twitter, and all of a sudden they tweet out his answer with no context, no context, question, nothing.
Nothing.
Like entertainers and competitors.
Nicely,
and you know what they were doing.
You
know what they were doing.
Nicely produced. I know, and I got
nicely produced, but also a poor job out of you, NFL, right there. So as far as Dylan
Yeah.
Gabriel's concerned, it is funny because you look at that quarterback, and again, Watson. I mean, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop where that he's finally off the roster. Or was he on some kind of reserve list at this point? I don't even know what his role is on Cleveland's roster at this point. Flacco could play well. He's the ageless wonder. I mean, again, he led this team to the playoffs a couple years ago, so
But
that wouldn't
what's the
surprise me.
benefit? Here's the thing. You want to win
But
some games
you
to say you're
you're right.
dry.
You're right. There's no benefit. If you wanna win right now, yeah, you play Flacco, then you see what happens. I mean, I don't think they're winning a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns right now. If you wanna see what you have for the future, so you're not back in this spot next year where you're forced to take if you're a top 5 pick. And believe me, Q, if Arch goes into the draft next year, you're probably gonna have, based on early mock drafts, you might have 5, 6 quarterbacks go in this first round next year,
Oh yeah,
which
sure.
is which is absurd. You have Arch Manning, the kid from South Carolina, Lenore
Sellers,
Sellers,
Penn
Cade
State,
Klubnik of
Klubnik.
Clemson,
Yep.
Nussmeier from LSU.
Yep.
I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple off
What
the top of
about the
my
kid
head.
from Penn State or the kid
Right,
from
Drew, yeah,
Arizona
Drew
State?
Aller's gonna be another one too. I mean, you're gonna have 5, 6 guys be a quarterback, be in the first round next year. So if you're Cleveland, it's like, how do you weigh this? Like, do you want to I don't want to say mortgage your future, but do you want to see what you have in Shadur Sanders? You obviously already have a star. Let's just put that out there. If he's your quarterback, he's a star, and I think people are going to flood the gates to see Shador Sanders play, and he clearly can play. We saw it in college. As long as he's not getting beat up every other play, the kid can play. He can throw it. He has the all-time completion percentage record in college football. He was very productive for a pretty decent team last year, and he was very productive for let's be honest, a half of a team, 2 years ago. He can play. So can Dylan Gabriel. But who would you rather have? I personally would rather have Shadur Sanders. I think Gabriel could be a fine NFL quarterback, maybe a guy who's not going to start everywhere he goes. But, I think if you're going to go in on one, Flacco's not the guy. Pickett's a emergency. He's an insurance policy, and even he's hurt right now. I think you should go all in on Shadur Sanders. Maybe not start him right away, but I think Cleveland does have pieces to, if you want to say it, hypothetically compete for like maybe the last wild card spot again with a guy like Flacco. But like you said, if they're 1-4, 1-5, and it's like, well, this season's basically a bust or a wash, let's throw Shadur in there. And I think a guy like Shadur could be your franchise. Now, is he going to need a couple of years, unlike a guy like Jaden Daniels, to be like, okay, he's going to be really, really good, and he's the guy that you can
Sure.
rely on week in and
Sure.
week out? Yeah, maybe, but that's a guy I think I would try to build my franchise around because he's got the star power. He's going to have support of the players because despite the media narratives, he was a great teammate at Colorado. You're not going to have the Dion influence. He's not going to be coaching the Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean? So don't worry about that for people who are even worried about that at all. That's a guy I would kind of go all in for, and then you clean out your quarterback room. Don't worry, and then you draft around him next year, even if you bottom out, because there's gonna be a lot of other talent to go
Right.
through in that draft. Because
But you
other
can't.
teams are gonna be quarterback needy.
Yeah, you can't just keep trying to throw the dart and see what hits sometimes, right? And that's the problem in the NFL. Look, I went through it as a Giant fan. It was like, when are you going to bench Eli? Now you have Daniel Jones. Do you win some games? Do you screw yourself out of a draft pick? I've never been a believer of that. Go out and win football games. Coaches don't want losses tagged to their resume and their coaching record. Cleveland's in a very inauspicious and precarious spot because I don't even think they know how to play this, to be quite honest. Like in their minds, Stefanski's like, if we can go 4-3 and Joe looks good, or maybe he tweaks a hammy, we hung around. I showed that we're competitive. Now I'll give Gabriel and or Shador some reps, and we'll see what we has. Now,
And it's funny, not to cut
yeah,
you off,
yeah,
but I feel like he's not on the hot seat whatsoever. Because I feel like Cleveland's in a
that's what
weird.
everyone's saying, but I don't believe that because I'm telling you what happens within these locker rooms. You're going to see it in Indianapolis. There's a sediment of players that are like, "You screwed this kid. We don't want Daniel Jones." There's a sediment of veteran players say, "Hey man, I want to win. Daniel Jones gives us the best shot."
Yeah.
The same it will take place in Cleveland eventually. Flacco will have that 2 or 3 interception game. He'll take some bad snaps. And then, the offense is struggling. They'll go to the offense. Maybe the defense, maybe Garrett has a comment and says, you know what? We're gassed. We're on the field too much. Translation, we can't sustain any drives with Joe Flacco. And that trickles down to the locker room. And then the head's got to roll. And I understand, and I know everyone I've spoken to in Cleveland, has telling me, stop saying this guy's on the hot seat. He's not. He's not. I don't agree with that. I believe he's definitely on the hot seat. How warm it is, we don't know because think about it. Him and Barry, when it came to who they're going to draft, Explain to me. You draft Gabriel and then you turn around and you draft Sanders. You already have multiple quarterbacks on the roster. There is such a disconnect with that franchise that right now they're grasping at straws. And I think their best shot is a couple games with Flacco, see where you're at. You win a couple games, have a little buzz in October. Then all of a sudden you pull a Coughlin. Coughlin turned around and bench Kurt Warner. Now I'm not going to sit there and say Sanders is Eli, but you want to see or Dylan Gabriel, whatever quarterback you decide. We know one thing: Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, they're not the future. They're not the answers.
No, they're not, and it's fascinating to me. And yeah, you can read one report; it'll say one thing, and another report will say another thing. But I really want to know what quarterback. I mean, again, Stefanski and Barry, they have to be on the same page for the most part, and have to come to an agreement and say, like, yes, we're going to take this guy in the NFL drafts. I'm sure Stefanski has a big say in terms of, yes, I want this quarterback, I want this quarterback, or I want this defensive end, whatever the case may be. But I really want to know, I mean, maybe it is Dylan Gabriel just because they'd selected him earlier in the third round rather than the fifth round with Sanders. But I really want to know what quarterback for Stefanski was like that. Like, that's my guy. Like,
you're never going to know.
Like, when again, right. we won't know. And that to me is the big mystery with the Cleveland Browns right now is, did Kevin Stefanski get forced into taking Dylan Gabriel when he said, Sanders has fallen far enough, we can easily take him right here and we're fine? Or did Kevin Stefanski say, I like Dylan Gabriel, I want him, and our quarterback room is set? And then did Barry come in and say, well, Sanders is here, we might as well take him, might as well have a shot right here? To me, when you draft two rookie quarterbacks, and this is not the same situation, I mean, I don't know how many people are doing this, but I've seen it some places enough where this is not the Redskins situation back in 2012 with RG3 and Kirk Cousins. RG3 was your number 2 overall pick. Kirk Cousins was insurance, and it turned out they needed that insurance. You don't draft Dylan Gabriel and then Shedeur Sanders, and then one of them's going to be insurance. One of those guys is going to take the reins as the starting quarterback because Kenny Pickett is your number 2. He's your backup. He's the guy who's going to be in the room to support the guys. He'll come in a pinch like he did in Philadelphia last year. Joe Flacco's your starter. We get it, but he's going to be there for one more year. Then maybe retire or go somewhere else. Who's the guy? Is it Shedeur Sanders or is it Dylan Gabriel? And the fact that they have 2 rookie quarterbacks, and if you totally went in, just fast forward to next year, only one of them is going to be on the roster.
We know that. That's a fact.
Yeah, and only one of them is going to be on the roster. They will trade one of them.
Of course.
I'm sure Flacco will be gone. Maybe Pickett stays around as a backup, but Sanders or Gabriel will be the starter next year unless they totally bottom out and they say, you know what, screw it. New regime change, or Stefanski says, you know what, screw it. We're going number 1 overall. We'll take a quarterback, and then we'll just clean house in our quarterback room next year when we surround our new number 1 pick with whatever at that point in 2026. But it's a very dicey and precarious situation. But I think in the end, if you're off to a bad start, you pull the plug on Flacco. You got enough juice out of him. You got juice out of him a couple of years ago when you did the playoffs. So you got all you can out of him. You're not going to start Kenny Pickett. You start Shedeur Sanders, because I think he gives you the most upside in terms of either making a run late down the stretch this year, if you need a spark, or he's the guy that's like, okay, that's a guy we can build around next year because we'll have a high pick anyway. Let's build around that guy because he's proven it that he can carry a football team like Colorado, again, albeit college. But just to me, based on what we see, and it's nothing against Dylan. I like Dylan Gabriel personally, but it just seems like the team would be rallying around a guy like Shedeur Sanders.
They need some juice. Sanders gives them the juice. Sanders gives them the juice.
That's what I mean. Like I said, 5 minutes ago, you have you right there. You have a franchise star. Now, again, if you draft Arch Manning, that's different.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. That's where you build. All right, Cleveland is Manning Town again, or however you want to phrase it. But if you pick one of these, if you told me to pick one of these 4 or 5 quarterbacks, to include Tyler Huntley into the conversation, if you told me I had to pick one quarterback to build a franchise around, I'm going to market my franchise around where, with a combination of skill, potential, marketability, and obviously the star power that your team can rally around, you're picking Shedeur Sanders every single time.
Yeah, and listen, the same scenario, even though it is somewhat apples and oranges, hangs true in New York with Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Daboll can say all he wants, and Russell Wilson looked good the other day, and Jackson Dart really looked good. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Long touchdown drives, efficient, engineering, orchestrating, getting the offense going, and now you've got a little, you've got some life to that franchise. But
just stay ready. And,
correct.
And if you're Daboll, and again, I think, it's not a hot take to say he's on the hot seat. I think
it's a 1-year deal. I mean, he's going in.
He's got to stack up wins. You're not going to. I mean, yes, if Jackson Dart's really good, you would like him to be, be the franchise quarterback now and lead you to wins. But if you're Brian Dable, you need to stack up wins. I mean, how much longer does Russell Wilson have?
And that's what he's doing.
Right. Let's just say, and I don't think they're going to be any good, but let's just say Russell Wilson leads you to 8 to 10 wins this year somehow if you're the Giants.
Oh my God! Then Brian Dable's getting Russell Wilson's comeback player of the year. Brian Dable's coach of the year. He's going to get.
And what do you do? Is it a Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy situation for next year?
But that's not a bad thing. People look at that and say there's always a negative. That is a great.
I didn't say it was a negative. I just said, what do you do now? Because at that point, if you have this supposed franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart, again, first round pick.
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. Everyone, and I know these guys listening right now know exactly where I'm going with this. They look at Sam Darnold last year and say that was an aberration, a flash in the pan. And then he had his opportunity to lock in home field, spit the bit against the Lions, spit the bit in the playoffs, and that's who Sam Darnold is. We've seen the body of work of Russell Wilson, but I think it's a good thing to have if you're Brian Dable because that gives you some leadway. It gives you a little more longer leash, and you could potentially run it back. And maybe let's say there are a couple games where they do lose 6 or 7 and they are blown out and Jackson Dart comes in and mop up duties here and there, or Russell Wilson, they're ahead, late or what I'm saying, like 20, which I don't think that's going to happen, but he gets his feet wet, so to speak. Then you got to figure out what you're going to do. I mean, they're not winning 10 games, but I know what you're saying. Russell Wilson knows he's on the back nine of his career. So he understands exactly why he was brought in. He made the decision because ultimately this is where I want to play. This is where I'm going to sign. I can come in. They already told him you are going to be the starter. Now, the question is how much, like in Cleveland, wiggle room. If they go 1-5 and they're scoring 25 a game and the defense isn't playing up to snuff, Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. If they're 1-5, 2-7, and he's 18 of 36, $165, and he's taking sacks and he's checking down, and it's nasty in November, they're going to call for Jackson Dart. Because Dable knows I need this kid to win, and they win 4 out of 5. Now Dable and Shane can go to Mara and say, okay, give us another year with this kid, right? So
heck, they don't even have to win. If he looks good, it's like Dable's gonna be like, hey, see what I have.
Well, that's good for the franchise, not good for Dable.
Right.
I know I got you for a couple more minutes. So what do? You mapped out the playoff scenarios here already?
Yeah, I revealed my full-fledged top 12, which again subject to change, but I did map out my top 12 and went through the whole bracket and picked my champ. I did, yes.
I mean, that's out. That's public domain, as we like to say.
It is public domain. I did it.
Right, who's your national champ? Let me guess. I feel as though you're gonna.
It's not written, but it is in spoken word, which is if you go to my social, it's actually it's on my Instagram. So it is public record.
All right, I'm gonna say, man, I feel like you're all about that Archman and hype train. Are you Texas?
Texas is my national champ. Yes.
And I didn't even look on your social. Hand to God, really?
Yes. So the way I have it mapped out, and again, the seedings might be a little bit wonky just because, we don't know how the committee is going to rate these teams, between 2 losses or 1 loss and who you lost to, so on and so forth. But give my top 12. I have Penn State number 1, Texas 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4, Alabama 5, Georgia 6, Oregon 7, Notre Dame 8, LSU 9, Miami 10. I haven't get into the playoff. Arizona, your Big 12 champ once again. They'll get in. And then Boise State as your group of 5 representative as the 12th seed. Just remember, and I feel like Heather Dinich right here, but remember the top. So all 5, the 5 highest ranked group, 5 highest ranked conference champs are guaranteed a spot, right? But it's no longer the top 4 or the 4 highest ranked conference champs are guaranteed those top 4 seeds. It just goes by strict ranking at that point. So that's why you could have 2 Big 10 teams or 2 SEC teams within the top 4 seeds. So I actually, for fun fact, I do have Ohio State right now anyway. And again, I could change my mind in 10 days of how this game's going to go. I do have Ohio State beating Texas in the first game of the season, and I have Ohio State beating Penn State in their regular season matchup. So 12-0 Ohio State, Big Ten championship. They will take on Penn State. but I have Penn State beating Ohio State. James Franklin getting that.
Oh, come on.
The 10-year drought's over for James Franklin.
Uh,
Ohio State for the first time in a long time.
the hell, just for back your play. I would have asked you if you're back your play.
Hang on. He beats them, so Penn State will de facto get the number 1 seed. Okay, so look at the number 1 seed. I have Texas at number 2 because they already have that loss to Ohio State. But I have them winning the SEC. I have Clemson at 3, and likely, I mean, if Clemson is so in this scenario, if Clemson is 13-0, like they'll be the number 1 seed.
Of course.
But I think Clemson could slip up with one game, whether it's a loss to South Carolina in a rivalry game, or maybe they trip up week 1 against LSU. Like, it could happen. I do have LSU making the playoff. So that's how my top 4 goes. I have Alabama being the runner-up in the SEC. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. Georgia gets the 6th seed, so there'll be another SEC representative. And I mentioned, Oregon, Notre Dame. Notre Dame probably an 11-1 team, so they could be higher. But I guess it's just going to depend on how the committee ranks them against.
I hope they get waxed by Miami to open up the season, even though they're favorites. But go ahead.
Hey, it could happen. I do have Miami in the playoffs. So and then through the rounds, quarterfinals, I have Bama over Boise State. Again, the first round games are on campus. Bama over Boise State. I have Georgia over Arizona State. Little upset special right here. I have Miami going to Eugene and upsetting Oregon in the first round based on my current rankings. And then I have Notre Dame and LSU matching up in South Bend, but with the Fighting Irish winning the Brian Kelly Bowl. So they'll advance to the second round. And then we get to the quarters. I have Ohio State over Alabama, Texas over Miami, Penn State in a rematch over Notre Dame, okay, after last year's semis. And then I really like Clemson. I think Clemson beats Georgia, so we get to the semis. Here's the rubber match. Ohio State and Penn State in the CFP semis. Game number 3. Ohio State wins and gets to the national championship. So James Franklin falls short one more time. He beats Ohio State finally, but yet he falls to them in the CFP semis. And then I have Texas over Clemson, just like last year, albeit a closer game this time in the playoffs. And then I have Texas over Ohio State for the national championship.
So I'm going to have to go back, and it's a lot to absorb because I'm going to find some holes in that.
You might.
Wait, well laid out, counselor. Then by everything you're saying, Arch Manning will be one and done. Arch Manning will come in, light the world on fire.
If Texas wins a national championship, then I would say Arch Manning played at a near either at a Heisman level or a near Heisman level. And in that case, if you're going to win a title, you're not coming back to run it back for 2 in a row. You'd be hard pressed to tell me if Arch Manning wins a national title with Texas. It plays pretty well, whether he wins the Heisman or not. But if he plays at a high level, Heisman or not, and he wins a title,
come back.
I am guaranteeing that he will go number 1 overall in next year's draft.
I mean,
or he'd be projected to, and he'd be stupid not to go to the draft at that point.
I mean, you're not really, jumping out of the gun here. Costco broke my heart not taking CU to win the Big 12. I thought he was team coach prime. I'll probably tell you what happened. The check probably didn't clear. That's probably what happened.
Bowl eligible, so they cut my pay for August. What do you want me to do?
Actually, he had a question about. Oh, here we go. Georgia Tech, CU +4 at home. Already put my parlay in with the over 54.
I mean, wow. You're banking on either Caden Salter or Julian Lewis to light the world
going off.
I mean, I think Colorado, and I said this last night actually, that I think Colorado, ironically, is going to be a better cohesive team this year. They're gonna win less games, and they won't be as explosive because you don't have Shedeur and Travis Hunter. But you have, I think you have a good quarterback option because Salter was really good at Liberty. I think he'll translate well. And I think Julian Lewis will be really good either this year or next year whenever he plays. And, again, you'll see freshmen growing pains. I think they're both going to play at some point. But I think their quarterback situation's fine. Does the offensive line hold up? Yes, you have Jordan Seaton back, which is really good, obviously. He's one of the better left tackles in the Big 12. But you have 4 new offensive linemen again. So, again, third time's the charm for Dion up front on the offensive line? And does that defense have too many holes? Again, they added more transfers again. So did they plug those holes? To me, if Colorado won, we know the Big 12. If Colorado won 9 games, but somehow they were the second team in the Big 12 championship game, would I be shocked? No, of course not. But I'm inclined to say Colorado takes a step back in the win column this year And then 2026 is probably the year where, like, okay, Julian Lewis runs the show at quarterback for Colorado. I'm sure that the recruiting trail wins are going to happen for Deion. They'll grab some pretty big transfers as usual, especially with the NIL dollars or whatever the case may be. They'll be better in 2020. 2026 will be the year where it's like, okay, Big 12 contender. But I think this year, safer to say, I would say bowl eligible, 6-6.
Interesting. I'm gonna save my CU thought for next week because I'll rankle you guys up. But I will save it for next week.
I like them at home though. I mean, we know Deion in those season opening games.
A lot of points.
Must see TV.
And now the cha-ching, the check went through. All right, so we know what you got cooking on 3. What are you going with Cal Live? I mean, high school football is right around the corner.
Yeah, Battle of the Beaches next week for us at Cape Atlantic Live. We're kicking off, I believe, on actually September 12th, so we have a couple weeks until our first game. But that'll be a mainland regional high school home game. They're hosting, your boys over the Millville Thunderbolts. That's going to be a huge.
It's always a great day to be a Thunderbolt.
That's going to be as we like to say, a huge game in high school football on that Friday night, and that is now 3 weeks away. I am going to be doing a game at Battle of the Beach to be, I'll be sure to tweet out the broadcast information for that. But I'm doing Kip Norcross against West Deptford for day 2 at Battle of the Beach as of right now. That's a 9 a.m. kickoff, by the way, over at Rowan University next Friday on the 29th. So that'll be my high school football debut this year. A little bit of a warm-up game before we get into our full-fledged, old school Cape Atlantic League teams. And then, every week we'll be, on the mic somewhere, either mainland or if we pivot to Holy Spirit, depending upon the schedule. And of course, the Chuck Smith Show is on Cape Atlantic Live right now on our podcast tab. Coach Smith, great preview of the Mustangs this year, and that'll be a weekly show once again every week starting on September 2nd after their first game against Atlantic City, which ironically, you're going to love this one, Rich, being a South Jersey guy. Mainland versus Atlantic City in Delaware to kick off the season. How about that?
Where are you playing that game in Delaware?
I believe they're in Wilmington.
Sure.
I think it's like a Gridiron Classic show, Beach. But I think Wilmington's hosting it. I think it's like a D3 college facility or something along those lines, or a bigger high school that likens to a college facility. So good showcase event for the kids. Good, great traveling experience. Yeah. It's just funny that they're playing a team that down the street, in a different state, which is kind of funny. But again, another loaded high school football schedule. Looking forward to it, and then got some other things cooking ahead of the college wrestling season as well. So that's in November. We'll get to it eventually, but already got some things in the stoking some fires right now.
Costco is going to join us during the week, and Man wants to know, ask Costco if he prefers the fat moon sandwich.
I don't remember those being on the Are You Hungry list. The Fat Daryl was mine. Fat Daryl was it, or the Fat Night, which is basically a Fat Daryl, but you had cheesesteak on it.
Fat coconut sandwich. I have to Google this one. What is that?
The Fat Daryl's the OG. That's like actually, what the hell is it now? Oh my god, it's like is it chicken, right? Is it chicken multiple sticks? And oh my god, I forget it. I've disappointed my alma mater. I can't believe I'm doing this right now.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of checks that are going to be bouncing this week, brother.
I know they are. I better go check my tax refund here.
yes, please do so. All right. Always appreciate you. Everyone give him a follow on X at Nick Costco 59. But great stuff as always, brother. We'll do it again next week. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Rich.
All right, there you have it. My guy, Nick Costco. All right, we got to take a quick time out, and then we'll wrap things up. I want to get to a couple more comments. You know what? We'll bleed over a little bit to 5 o'clock. That's okay. I did want to make a point, too, that and I wasn't sure if Costco knew this, but some of the games he'll be calling will also be on Sports 48, WWON. And I think they're going to take some of these feeds from the YouTube Live channel, which, oh, by the way, that's where Back Your Play will now live for the football season. That's New York 48, WWON TV. So every Sunday at 11 a.m., you guys can check them out on Roku and check out Back Your Play. And we'll do a lot with the gambling lines in the NFL. Tommy in Summers Point said, man, that is a high over for first game of the season. Yeah, that is a very high over. But, college football. I mean, some of these lines are absolutely ridiculous. I started to look at, I have been looking at these week 1 NFL lines. My goodness. Match or sale. Week 1, just to tell you, the thought process here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games where the spread is 5 or more. Just, buyer beware. Caution out there, as we like to say. Everyone always pushes, those defenses ahead of those offenses and blah, 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 blah. I heard a couple of rumors that the Raiders are going to try to land Hendrickson, make a move for him. I don't know why, if you're going to trade, why would you want to trade him, keep him in the AFC? I wouldn't do that personally. Sarge chimes in Delaware. Q, listen to the tail end of the opening monologue on Anthony Richardson. I think your listener said it best. There's no patience in regards to evaluating the quarterback. We give up too fast on them. You do. The NFL does. But I think, as Lloyd mentioned, a lot of it has to do with those bonus babies and those contracts and top 5 and guaranteed money. I think sometimes it's just not the best fit. Sometimes a kid gets drafted and it's just not the right fit for him. And the organization, they give up. I thought there was a really great, not thought, but I know there was a really great comment in here, and I think it was from Ball. 316. When did it stop taking 4 to 5 years for a rookie quarterback? No, that was not it. It was a really good. These guys need to watch preseason mop up for 3 years. Geno came around. Baker came around. They need time. Sam Darnold came around to some extent. It's a really good point. I think we're programmed. It doesn't work out. The guy's a bust. But you're banking on a quarterback who's had 69 starts over a quarterback that's had a handful of starts. But again, the quarterback that had 69 starts showed you time in and time out, he can't, he's not a franchise quarterback. He's just not. Daniel Jones is not a franchise quarterback. He's a bridge right now, period. He is a bridge. All right, don't forget, we're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, 20% off, BYP20 in the show notes. We're also powered by our good friends over at 3 Brooks Bourbon, and get ready with tea. As we start to wrap it up, we will, as I mentioned, during the week, we're going to have some different times we're going to be airing the show. We're also going to be having some pre-recorded segments up on the YouTube channel. If you're not going to be able to catch me live, just hang tough for another week or two. We're just ironing out some details, but you'll be also able to get the show on Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course, Apple Podcasts, and the YouTube channel at Rich Q. Check me out on X, also SR1029 FM The Game. Good stuff from Costco, good stuff from you guys on a Woosah Wednesday, 16 of books, 5 o'clock straight up. We will be back in the saddle tomorrow. Lloyd Vance is going to join us. We will go NFL heavy with Lloyd Vance, Jonathan Marshall later in the week. Also, we want to get in a little baseball with Steve Gardner. We'll probably record that spot earlier in the day, and then we'll post that up on the YouTube channel around 4, 5, or 6 o'clock. But you guys are fantastic. No plays on this Wednesday. Have a good Sports Wednesday. Enjoy it. As always, be safe, be sound. We will talk to you right back here tomorrow around 4 o'clock-ish on another edition of On Cue. Until then, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.